Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Well, welcome everybody to our new Health is Wealth speaker series, where the Good Life Healthy Living classes are hosting distinguished speakers every month to talk to our community about living healthy and living better and longer. We're really excited that you're here with us to kick off this speaker series. Every Wednesday of this month of February 2021, we are celebrating Black History Month with a weekly speaker series where we'll focus on African American health and well-being. And so my name is Shanette Merrick. For those of you all who do not know me, I'm the program manager for The Good Life, where exercise and nutrition are medicine. And so with that being said, we'd love to know where you guys are joining us from. So please feel free to enter that into the chat and let us know where you're at today and where you all are joining in from. We'd also like to say hello to everybody that's joining us from Facebook. So hello to all of our Facebook family. Hi, you guys. It's important that I tell you that The Good Life is a growing national program that is being developed by a network of research centers across the country, focused on supporting healthy aging. Together, we develop programming to promote healthy lifestyles and healthy relationships. We are dedicated at reversing the growing public health crisis of dementia affecting economically disadvantaged older adults. We believe the good life can be achieved by everyone. The Good Life and the Health is Wealth series are developed by UC Davis Alzheimer's Disease Research Center in the East Bay, the California Department of Health, and by the National Institute of Health, better known as the NIH. So before we get started, we have some tips to help you enhance your Zoom experience. So you'll see a small icon at the bottom of your screen. That icon says chat. When you click on that, you'll see a sidebar show up on the right. At the bottom of that sidebar, you can actually type in any comments or questions that you have. We will have a chat monitor that will be there to respond to you all, okay? If you would like to click on the icon that is also at the bottom of your screen that says participants, you can actually see everybody that's inside of this session in this talk today. So we'll have about 20 minutes of presentation by Dr. Croft, and afterwards we'll have about 10 minutes for an open Q&A. Okay, without any further delay, today we are honored and excited to have Dr. Raina Croff join our discussion about owning our health. Dr. Raina Croff is Assistant Professor of Neurology at the NIA Latent Aging and Alzheimer's Disease Center at Oregon Health and Science University. Her work focuses on creating culturally celebratory approaches to physical activity, social engagement, and reminiscence therapy for healthier aging, particularly amidst the trauma of gentrification and its implication of older Black adults, cognitive health, and social connectedness. All right, without any further ado, let's all welcome Dr. Raina Croff. Hi, Dr. Raina Croff.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be here. Let me share my screen and get started. Okay, just 1 second, please. And right. Well, like I said, I am so excited to be here, and I had a chance to see just the bit end of the exercise class, and I was moving my arms a little bit too, and so I'm energized now, and I hope that you're all bringing a good energy to this class. So in this talk called Honoring Our History and Owning Our Health, Facing the Future with Resiliency and Connectedness, I want to set the tone for us today. And that tone is that we come, as Black women, we come from a long line of change makers. Nobody was going to make these changes for us. And many of these women, they were everyday women, but they were faced with extraordinary circumstances. And even though they may have been seen as small or insignificant in their community, they still had the courage and the capability to make change. And they had a vision for a better future. And so I'm hoping that you will imbibe today, that you will imbibe some of that courage, that capability, and that you will hold a vision with me for a better future, not only for our own health as individuals, but for the health of our community. So Barack Obama says, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. So some of these change makers below, I'm sure you recognize most of them, but there's probably a few new people. So I have to start with Harriet Tubman. She did 13 death-defying trips back into the South to free other enslaved Africans. And she will be the first African-American on US money. Think about the odds that were against her, and yet she still was able to make this phenomenal change that not only affected our community, but they affected the history of the United States. Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler, she was the first African-American medical doctor in 1864. This is when our people were still in slavery in parts of the country. The odds that were stacked against her were immeasurable. Ruby Bridges, who can forget this cute little girl, and yet she was the first to integrate schools. Now, I went to a lot of schools where I was among very few Black kids at the school, and it was hard. So I can only imagine how hard it was for this girl and for her to maintain that courage throughout what she was doing. This, of course, is Shirley Chisholm, first African-American presidential candidate in 1972, at a time when the odds were not only against women, of course, but definitely still against African-Americans. And this is Dr. Alexa Kennedy. She is the first Black woman neurosurgeon. So I'm starting this talk with these women to inspire us that we too can make change, that the odds are no harder against us than it was for these women. And yet they were able to instill the power of change and the power of possibility, and we can too with our own health and within our communities. So today's takeaways, I'm going to go over what are health determinants and what are health disparities. And then we're going to take a look at staying social, moving our bodies, nutrifying our bodies. And yes, I know nutrify is not a word, but it was the word that spoke to me that seemed to hold the most power. So I'm going to use it. And then we're going to talk about knowing your numbers, how you can own your health at a doctor's visit. So what factors determine our health? There are things that we can't change, so you might as well not stress over them. That's age. We can't change how old we are. We can't change our gender. We can't change our genetics. And we can't change our ethnicity. Now, with ethnicity, this one kind of bothers me because it's not some biological difference in who we are as Black Americans that affects our health. It is the societal environment in which we are in that makes our ethnicity a risk factor for some health conditions. But there are many things that we can own. We can own how much we exercise and manage our blood pressure. We can own the food that we put in our bodies. How are we providing our body with the nutrients it needs to operate at its best? We can control our weight and our cholesterol. We can own how social we are, and I'll go over how important this is for brain health. And we can control or manage our chronic conditions, either not getting these chronic conditions, managing them if we have them, or even reversing some of them. And yes, there are barriers to all of these. You know, if you break a hip, it may be harder to exercise. If you don't have good access to food, that's a problem as well. But largely, these are the modifiable factors that we can change to some degree about our health. So there's something else that's called social determinants of health. These are things that individuals don't really have direct control over. It's more as a result of the society we live in. And in America, it is built on systemic racism. And this creates disparities in our health. So African Americans, for example, we are disproportionately likely to live in poor neighborhoods. And this might mean higher rates of crime. So we may not feel as safe to be walking and engaging in physical activity in our neighborhoods, or access to healthcare. Maybe we don't have access to culturally competent providers. We, as a whole group overall, we hold more, we may have lower income or less education. All of these are social determinants that affect our health. So these things are changeable because this is what is created by society, but they're hard for us to change directly as individuals. So what are health disparities? I'm sure that you've heard of this term and maybe you've heard some different definitions, but this is what Healthy People 2020 says. They say that health disparities are a type of health difference that's closely linked with social, economic, or environmental disadvantage. And health disparities negatively affect groups of people who have systemically experienced greater obstacles to health based on their racial or ethnic group, based on other characteristics, and based on characteristics historically linked to discrimination and exclusion. So what does this look like on the ground? I'm a very visual person, so I need to see this in terms of symbols, what this looks like. And so what this image shows us is that for every one white person, okay, that's this group here. Now, white people in America have the fewest barriers to health and the best social determinants of health. They often have, as a group, have greater access to better education, have greater wealth, et cetera, et cetera. And this is us as African Americans here. For every one white male or white person who has a stroke, there are 2 African Americans who have a stroke. Okay, and you can just go on down the line. For adult onset diabetes, for every 1 white person, there's 2 African Americans who are affected diabetes. So that means that we are twice as likely than white people to get diabetes. And so this is why we're always being compared to white people when we're talking about our health, or when you see our statistics on a graph, we're compared to white people because this is the group with the fewest barriers and best social determinants of health. And we see these health determinants, these health disparities playing out in a very real way right now with COVID-19. And you can see here that African Americans, we have more cases compared to whites. We have almost 4 times more hospitalizations, and we have almost 3 times as many deaths to COVID. So let's talk about health equity, because that's what we're striving for. So health equity is the attainment of the highest level of health for all people. Okay, and so achieving health equity, that means we need to equally value everyone, and we need to focus on those social determinants of health, those avoidable inequalities. And we also need to look at amending those historical and contemporary injustices that have affected our health, that have created health barriers and barriers to better health care. So I'd like you to take a look at the picture that you see in front of you and imagine that that baseball field is our best health. And then we have health information, or let's call it the internet. That's how we are accessing information to understand how can we arrive at our best health? What are the tools we need? How do we eat? How much exercise? What vitamins? That information. And then the boxes, that's accessibility. So in theory, right, everybody has access to websites because a website doesn't ask you to check a box if you're Black or white and then let you in. Internet, once you're on it, you can have access to any site you want. But we all know it's not quite that simple, and it's not that easy for everybody. So this short guy on the right, perhaps they are not able to afford internet. Perhaps they are not able to afford the device on which they need to access the internet. Perhaps they are overburdened with childcare and working too much to be able to have time to access the health information. Maybe they don't have enough education to discern what's quality health information compared to health information that is not quality. So what equity is, it is readjusting our resources so that everybody can have equal outcomes, meaning that everybody has an equal access to understanding the health information to arrive at their best health. So we have health disparities when it comes to brain health as well. So African Americans, we're about twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline than white people. And yet we have lower perceived risk of Alzheimer's disease. We have less knowledge about the disease, and we have less concern for developing it, and we have less likelihood to seek early care. And if you remember those social determinants of health, a lot of this has to do with education, access to care and quality information. But even though we're faced with so many of these sentences that start off with, we are twice as likely, we are 3 times as likely, we are 4 times as likely. Yes, there are many things that are out of our control, but there are things that are within our control. And so we need to focus our energies and our courage and the ability to change those things on those things that we can. So you remember from the what factors determine our health, these are those modifiable risk factors. Okay, these are the elements that will modify our risk for Alzheimer's disease, for cognitive decline, for chronic conditions that contribute to our risk for cognitive decline, Alzheimer's disease, and so many other health disparities. So I'm going to talk about brain health and being social and why it's so important for us to maintain our social networks. And I acknowledge that that is hard during COVID, but I see that all of you seem to know how to use the internet. You're on here now, and you are engaging in that exercise class. That counts as both social and physical activity, and you are already doing something wonderful for your health and for your brain. So being social is important because it can counter depression, anxiety, loneliness, and isolation. And these are all major risk factors for cognitive decline and for the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Studies have shown that large social networks are protective against dementia, depression, and stress. And this is particularly important because, as I said before, depression and stress has been shown to have a faster progression in Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And so there's a study, it's called the Chicago Minority Aging Research Study. And they were looking at the relationship between depression and cognitive decline. And in their study, they had 298 African Americans. The average age was 74, and they had annual depression assessment, and they did their cognitive testing. And what they found was that depression was related to decline in their semantic and working memory. So your semantic memory is your long-term memory. It's your ability to recall words and concepts. And now looking at a stress study, this study was done with 467 African Americans. The average age was 73, and nobody had dementia. So these were all cognitively healthy people. And they took cognitive tests. So by cognitive, I mean how they're able to name images in an assessment. They'll have various pictures and you'll have to name what they are. There's some counting forwards and backwards, and there's all these little tests that they do to test different qualities in how you function. And you'll hear me mentioning some of those parts of our cognitive functioning, like semantic memory and episodic memory, and I'll explain those as those terms come up. So in this study with the 467 African Americans, they did their cognitive testing over 9 years, and they took a stress scale or a stress survey, and they found that African Americans with higher levels of perceived stress had more rapid declines in their overall cognition, and most notably in their episodic memory and their visual spatial ability. So global cognition is their overall cognition, how their brain works overall, and this is really important for our everyday functioning. And visual spatial is how you orient objects in space, including how you orient yourself in your environment. So that is some of the disorientation we see with individuals who are living with Alzheimer's disease. So being social is important. It is cognitively stimulating. It is a very highly stimulating activity for our brains. It requires our attention, our working memory. We have to be able to recall things that happened that day. If we want to share a story, we have to recall what is our relationship like with this person we're talking with. We engage our executive functions, which is how we organize our thoughts. We have to come to a conversation with emotional intelligence, how to respond appropriately to something sad someone says or to something happy someone says. And we have to engage our language. We have to recall words, we have to recall names, all that stuff that kind of stresses us out right before a moment if we are experiencing some memory loss. And finally, studies show that having a greater social network can support successful aging in place in your own home. So as you are more socially connected to your neighbors and your community, you have more resources to help you age healthfully in your own home. So we should celebrate our connections. And you know, as a community, as a people, connections and community, that has been our lifeline. It has been a very real mechanism for survival throughout our history, to come together as a community and within the protection of our community. And there's this Xhosa saying from South Africa. This is part of the Ubuntu philosophy. And it says, I am because we are. So I'm an anthropologist. I study humans and culture and how that relates to health. And in my mind, we're not human because we have a head and we have arms and we have legs. We are human because of our interactions with other humans. That is the essence of humanity to me. And so this is a study that was done at where I work at Oregon Health and Science University. And they found that daily 30-minute online conversation over 6 weeks improved people's executive function, so how they plan and focus and your ability to do several things at once. And this improved among people who were healthy as well as those who were already experiencing more memory loss than is normal for their age. And they also found that among people who had mild cognitive impairment, who were experiencing more memory loss than is normal, this improved their psychomotor speed, so their hand-eye coordination. We also know that stimulating activities in late life is linked to less decline in brain function. So in this study, this was 1,929 cognitively healthy participants, 70 years old or older, and they were followed for about 4 years. And they found that there was a significant decrease in risk of new onset mild cognitive impairment. The more people used computers, were engaged in craft activities, were engaged in social activities, and in playing games. It's really important that you're able to find the activities that you love and stay engaged with those, and engage another person or a group, whether that's doing Scrabble online, because I know it's difficult to get together in person during COVID, or to make sure you are connected to whatever quarantine bubble that you are in. So the work that I do revolves around reminiscence and using historical images to spark conversations and to get people interested in sustaining conversation and there's these social relationships. So this study was an 8-week life review reminiscence program. Okay, so this was with older African-American men, and over the 8 weeks, almost nobody dropped out. So this was an activity that really held people's interest. But most significantly is they found significant decline in depression. And this is really important because, as I mentioned before, depression is linked to greater memory loss and faster progression of dementia. So one way to keep engaged and to stir up those old memories and to have this experience of a life review and really looking at all that you have experienced, perhaps with a friend or with family members, get out those old photos and try some reminiscence. This study talks about singing for health and well-being. And they looked at what are the health benefits of joining a choir. And now there are online choirs. I know it's not the same as being in person, but whatever you can do to maintain that social engagement. So this study was done, it was a small study with 17 African Americans in the study, and they held focus groups to understand people's experience of being in this choir. And they said they had a joyful time together. They said, I look forward to feeling good. Now, how important is it? I think you all know to have something to look forward to, especially during these times. And I don't know about you, but I am in my house day after day after day with these children, and I need something to look forward to. Other studies back this up. Older adults who participated in community-based choirs reported fewer doctor visits, fewer falls, less medication use, and better physical health over a 2-year period compared to older adults who did not do these things. Okay, let's take a look at celebrating our bodies. And you all are on the right track. You were just in the let's get moving. Keep it up, that is wonderful. So even though it doesn't have to always be strenuous exercise, even daily walking, even at a low intensity, I'm talking about 100 steps per minute, okay, that has been linked to larger hippocampal volume in older African American women. So this was a Baltimore study, 82 African Americans, they did not have dementia, and the average age was 67 years old. And they wore an activity or a step activity monitor, sort of like one of those watches that tracks your steps. And most of them did low intensity walking, and yet they found that the hippocampal volume was associated, the hippocampal volume grew even with, like I said, this low intensity walking, but larger hippocampal volume was correlated with greater and longer and more frequent walking. So it's not necessarily getting up and doing a really vigorous exercise. Please continue to do that if that's what you're doing, and it's great with your doctor, but it's a total physical activity. So it's both exercise and non-exercise. It could be cleaning your house, it could be gardening, it could be walking to the store, or parking a little bit farther away instead of right next to the door. Any way you can keep your body moving has been shown to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease and to have better cognitive function. So the SHARP study that I run in Portland, Oregon, This was walking 3 times a week in Portland's historically Black and gentrifying neighborhoods. And they looked at historical images of the neighborhood to keep their conversation going. And they walked for 6 months. And we found that half of the walkers had improved cognitive test scores after 6 months of walking. We also found that 63% of those participants who were experiencing mild cognitive impairment or more memory loss than is normal, they had improved cognitive test scores as well. So this is a real picture of real participants in our study and one of our research assistants, Jewel Towns. And if you look at table 1, we improved, sharp walkers improved in all of these areas, right? They were reporting feeling, having better health. They reported more days feeling calm and peaceful and less days feeling downhearted and blue. But a really great finding was mood. It improved mood. And so after 6 months of walking, 100% of people said their mood was better since the walking began. Let's talk about celebrating Earth's bounty, all that this planet has to offer us in terms of health and nutrients that we can put in our bodies. So this Better Diet study, this was done with African Americans who had the highest genetic risk for Alzheimer's disease. So we think, oh, well, we're genetically inclined for Alzheimer's disease. There's nothing I can do about that. There is some level of control. So in this study, 228 participants, and they looked at how they changed their diet over 5 years. And what they found that people who changed their diet towards a Mediterranean and a DASH diet, which is a diet to reduce hypertension, they had slower decline in their verbal memory among African-American women. And if you see the Let's Get Cooking picture, that's basically those kind of foods when I talk about a Mediterranean or a DASH diet. Another study looked at 66 cognitively healthy African Americans as well as white Americans. They were between the ages of 46 and 77 years old, and their parents had a history of having Alzheimer's disease. And so they were given food questionnaires and cognitive tests and some cardiovascular assessments. And they found that those with the Southern diet, I think we know this diet, the high fat and the sweet tea, that was associated with reduced cognitive performance in African Americans, while those who were practicing what they call a prudent diet, rich in vegetables, fruits, and cereals and legumes, that was linked with better cognitive outcomes in African Americans. We also know that vitamin D and vitamin E and PUFAs, which are polyunsaturated fats, think avocado and salmon and seeds and nuts, basically what you see in the Let's Get Cooking picture, that helps protect against cognitive decline and delayed onset for slower progression of Alzheimer's disease. So beyond the Let's Get Cooking, these are 2 websites that I have really enjoyed. I am Tabitha Brown. She has wonderful cooking videos, plant-based, and then nutritionfacts.org. They have, literally hundreds of 2-3-minute videos that just give you the direct science about food. It's not funded by the Dairy Association or the Sugar Association or the Meat Association. It's just straight up scientific facts about foods you're wondering about. And he breaks it down in a real accessible way. So we're starting to wrap up here, but I want to talk about how can we celebrate owning our health? We have to know our numbers. So these are some of the numbers you need to know. Blood pressure, cholesterol. Do you have any vitamin deficiencies and blood sugar? So for blood pressure, there was a study with 22,000 middle-aged and older Black and white adults over 8 years. They, of course, took their blood pressure, but they also did cognitive tests every year. And they found that Black adults with high systolic blood pressure, okay, so that's the top number, showed faster declines in global cognition. And so global cognition, that includes memory and being able to retain or learn new things and to understand things. And this was, of course, compared to white adults with the same conditions. Okay, cholesterol, that is associated with increased levels of vascular dementia. I'm talking about the bad cholesterol. Okay, so this is the cholesterol you get from eating animal products. Okay, and so vascular dementia is a form of dementia where you're not getting adequate blood flow to your brain. And I put here less than 70 LDL is ideal, but you need to check with your doctor because there's different numbers that you should be under depending on if you're at high risk for heart disease, if you have diabetes, etc. So in a study about African Americans with diabetes, there was 1,700 African American participants, 441 of them had diabetes. And they were given they were given cognitive assessments, okay, to measure their cognitive functioning at 6 points over 15 years. And they found that those with diabetes had significantly faster cognitive decline. So it's really important that you stay on top of your blood sugar, that you know what percentage of the hemoglobin A1C test, what percentage you're at. Vitamin D deficiency in African Americans, this has been linked with worse cognitive performance and lower hip bone density. This is important because if you know, as you get older and your bones may become weaker, if you're not keeping up on your vitamins or for other reasons, if you break a hip, that can put a big dent in your exercise routine. It can change how you eat. It can change your mood. So it's really important to stay on top of your vitamins. So this is my last slide here. And I want to talk about how can I own my health at doctor's visits? Remember, you need to give knowledge and you need to get knowledge. Okay, you want to come ready with a list of health changes, your medications, past medical problems, but you got to ask questions. Okay, nobody's going to advocate for you like you. Ask what test is being done. How will I find out the results? Are they going to call you or do you have to go online to look it up? How can I learn more about my condition and how can I manage it? But most of all, I want you to ask, what can I do with my diet to manage this? What can I do with my lifestyle to manage this? So many times we're given a bottle, we're given pills for our blood pressure, we're given pills for our cholesterol. And it's important that you follow your doctor's instructions, but take charge of those things that you can take charge of. Make sure you're asking what you can do with diet and lifestyle as well. So that's my talk for today. You can own your own health and you can start now to face the future with resiliency and connectedness. And just remember that as a people, we have always had to forge ahead and forge change amidst incredibly difficult circumstances, but we have done it. And we can do it for our own health and for our collective community health too. Thank you. And I am happy to stick around for some discussion. If you want to learn more about the SHARP study, I do have the website below.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Croft. That was awesome. So now we'll open up the floor, the chat for any questions. Do we have any questions from any out there? Okay. G, you know how this works. Go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you for such a beautifully presented presentation. I love the photographs. I just smiled when I saw the study of the African-American men. It was so good to see their faces. But I have a question about your reminiscence therapy. I talk with a lot of friends and I notice that a lot of our conversations will be about the past. It doesn't seem like many of my senior friends talk about the future and moving forward. But those same stories are coming up over and over and over again. How do you know when that reminiscence is true reminiscence and it's not a problem? You know what I'm asking?
I think I know what you're asking. I think that, you know, if you're engaged with friends and you're talking, you're getting that cognitive stimulation, you're getting that, you know, what it is that's important for your brain health, and you're connecting with people. I'm not sure what you mean by if it's a problem. Do you mean if people are having trouble remembering their past, or if they're just too fixated on their past instead of moving forward? Okay. You know, it could be, you know, we have more depression among our people than we may know on the surface. It could be an issue with depression. These are tough times. We are, many of us are quarantined, and, you know, I'm thinking of well, not even last summer, summer before that was much better than what we may be facing this year. So it could be many things. Now, to understand if it's a problem with memory, if you have more memory loss than is normal, that would be, you know, forgetting people's names, but we all do that. That can also be affected by stress. But when you start to forget people's names that you know, or not so much forgetting where you put your keys, but you know you have a real problem when you're having a problem connecting what the keys are for. Okay, so those are just some ways to understand when there's a problem. I'm not sure how to best answer the problem about if we're too fixated on the past. But you know, there are ways you can change that conversation to take the past and how can we learn from that, or how can we now think about, okay, this is how we did things before. How can we apply this to a hopeful future going forward?
Awesome. Thank you so much for your question, G. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm going to change my view so I can see everyone. Okay, Brenda, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Hi, my name is Brenda Harrell, and I missed your talk. I didn't get a chance. Is there a way that I can find your talk on YouTube, or are you going to be speaking again, or can I go and listen to what you said at a later date?
And I believe we will, to answer that, Dr. Croft, for you, we will have the talk. It is being recorded, so we will post it at a later date onto the goodlifepath.org.
I'm so mad with myself. I also wanted to hear the talk, but when I walked through the door, I think that was the end of what she was saying. So hopefully I'll get a chance to hear it.
Really great. So we'll make sure that you guys have access to this.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Ruth Ann, thank you. Ruth Ann, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Ma'am. Okay,
my question is, I was writing down the person with the Mediterranean earth-based food, and I have JAMTABITHE Brown.com/food. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's I am Tabitha Brown.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, of course.
She's awesome. She has a lot of really amazing content. She's really funny, and her recipes are just phenomenal. So
she makes you feel like you're right there in the kitchen with her.
She does. She really does. All right. Thank you for your question, Ruth Ann. Do we have any more questions?
I think Kelly was saying you can watch it on Facebook Live.
Okay. All right. Do we have any more questions? Let me see. Is there any questions in the chat? Just scrolling through. Oh, hey there, Miss Barbara. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I don't have a question. I'd like to say thank you very much. You've done a very good job of covering all the areas that I'm presently working on or embracing. And I have to shout out to Good Life because the classes I'm taking here are ensuring that I follow up, not just that I attend. So the information is timely. I'm glad this information is going to be available to everyone, and I will pass it on. You were absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I am so impressed by the Good Life. It's a real creative program. You know, I might jump in some of those exercise classes.
Please do. Please do. Yeah, we have a nice variety of workouts, Zumba, now yoga, and you would absolutely love the cooking/nutrition class. It's a lot of fun. So we would love to see you anytime. You're always welcome. The door is always open. Do we have any other questions for Dr. Croft? Are you sure? I was gonna say, because I know you guys like to ask a lot of questions. Okay, Evelyn Lee, and then I'll go to you, Miss Pamela. All right, Evelyn, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I would like to know about the vitamin D because I've been taking vitamin D for 3 years. I would like to know when could I get off of it?
I didn't hear the last part.
Can you get off the vitamin D?
Well, first, I want to make sure that people are consulting with their provider, around questions of memory loss and around questions of, what you can and can't take in medications. I'm a researcher. I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't feel that comfortable giving you advice. So I'm not sure. I don't have a good answer for that, but I would say definitely go in next time you see the doctor, or if you see him online, come in with your list of questions. And don't be satisfied if they don't answer your questions. Ask it again, ask it 3 times, follow up with email if you have to. But you are a person and not a time slot or a number. So you deserve to have your health paid attention to by your provider.
Absolutely. All right, is that it? Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. Pamela, I believe you were next, so I'm just going to go up and ask you to unmute, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I, like Brenda, caught the tail end of your presentation, so I put in the chat. I mirror her inquiry, so I'm looking forward to being able to receive the information via the Good Life. I did listen to a bit of it in the car. I thought the studies were amazing. I'm not sure, were there websites associated with those studies that were done so that, we could read the studies and more about the participants and what have you? Is that possible?
Well, I do have on each slide, that really small writing that was at the bottom. Those are the references.
Yeah.
I know that's hard to read. I'm happy to provide a Word document with a list. These are the scientific studies that we're reading, and not all of them have a website.
Okay.
But some of them are accessible to read online.
Well, I'd be happy with the ones that do have a website so that I could just review those studies and look at it. I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. But what I heard was fantastic. It's just better to see the visual. And your slides were amazing. I liked a lot of your slides. So I was able to see some of it, but I was driving and, I'm not supposed to be, I wasn't texting and driving, but I'm also not supposed to be looking at my phone and driving.
Yeah, you gotta be safe out there.
Thank you very much.
Good deal, Pamela. Thank you so much for your question. Okay, so now I'm going to go to our chat, and we have a question from Juanita. It's a very interesting question, and she asks, what if your spouse doesn't remember a discussion that you had in the last conversation that you had when you're mentioning it, and they get very defensive? Can we get them into a doctor for testing?
They might just not want to remember that you're asking them to fix the roof, or you're asking them to, eat a veggie burger instead of a hamburger. So, it depends on the circumstance. But you should be going in, bringing up any concerns about memory during your regular doctor's visits. And they will be able to do cognitive assessment potentially, or to discuss with you what is a normal age-related memory loss that you don't perhaps need to be so concerned about, and what merits a little bit more concern. But again, please do ask about diet and lifestyle changes as well, because they don't have to be drastic changes. These are going to be small changes that really add up over time. But again, you'll need to speak specifically with your provider if you see these patterns of not remembering conversations you just had. Then you may want to speak to your provider, and perhaps they can refer you to a memory specialist.
Thank you. Thank you, Juanita, for your question. Thank you, Juanita, joining us all the way from Florida, from sunny Florida. Thank you so much. And then we have another question from the chat, and this is from Rachel. And she asked, as a white clinician, are there any specific ways I can support African-American clients when experiences or concerns that I haven't personally, with experience or concerns that I haven't personally encountered or challenging to navigate or remedy?
Yes, and I think already by asking that question, that is a step. You need to practice deep listening. So that's not just hearing what people are saying, but it's full attention. And I know this is hard when providers have a certain time slot, but you've got to find a way to make that work. This deep listening where you're looking at, you know, people's body cues, but you're also hearing what they're saying and you're asking questions. Make sure to leave a space for questions. And if someone comes in and they don't appear to have any questions, you know, inform them about types of questions that they could be asking you, you know, help empower them to ask questions about their own health and not to just assume that they have to get what they get and they're not allowed to bring up other issues and other questions. Also familiarizing yourself with the Black experience. There's a lot of different Black experiences, but you got to continually work on that awareness. It's not going to come overnight. It comes with humility. It comes with understanding your own privilege in relation to some of the patients you may be seeing. So it can be a slow process, but like I said, little changes definitely add up. And it's about empowering your patients to come prepared with questions and to give them the information that they need.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much, Rachel, for your question. That was a very thoughtful question. All right, I'm going to go back to our guest and ask, is there anyone else that has any questions for Dr. Croft? Questions or comments? Okay, Martha and Coco, yay. Hello. Two of my favorite sisters. Go ahead.
Thank you, Shanette. This is Coco Ye. Dr. Croft, I just wanted to say, as some others have said, that I think your slides were excellent, and I have participated in many forums like this, and I really think it's so important for us as Black folk to see those kinds of slides with Black people. I think too often when non-Black folk or even some Black folk are doing presentations, they don't make the slides inclusive. And I find that personally off-putting. So I really loved your slides. I loved your whole talk, but your slides, I mean, they just really grabbed and engaged me from the beginning. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for that comment. You know, and not only I think is it seeing images of ourselves, but people that look like real people. You know, I see the same basically older Black models on a lot of flyers. It looks like they just walked off of a golf course or something. And that's not, you know, we need to see diversity of who we are. We need to see different skin tones, different body types. But also I think it's so important to set the tone and to link our lives to the history and the legacy of the lives before us, so that we're not isolated in this time and in this body, but we are connected to community, not only in the present, but also in the past. And the changes that they have made impact us, and our changes will impact the health and wealth of our community going forward. So, and I really appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your comment. Okay. Do we have any other questions? All right. So it looks like we have another question from the chat, and it is from Mars. And Mars's question or comment, it says, some doctors and clinicians do not seem to respect our knowledge of our bodies. How do we break through?
That is the question. Well, first you have to come in valuing yourself and your opinion, and knowing that the doctor you're seeing, they don't know everything, that there are things that you know about you that you have to let them know, or they're not going to know. So that's the first step, is the actions that we can control, you know, making sure that we are asking those questions. And then the other thing is not being satisfied if you don't get the answers that you're looking for, the information. You know, you can, I guess, call I don't have the right word for the front desk or something, but, you know, voice your concerns, see where you can get that information. There's also community health programs often that have the information you need. But in terms of getting the provider to listen to you, that's a tough one. I'm not a provider myself, and I naturally gravitate towards listening to people, and other people don't. I don't have a great answer, but I think it's persistence. And I think it is looking at multiple sources to get your information. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I do think if you feel that you have been unheard and you're systematically unheard, I think that needs to be brought up to the organization where you're seeking your care.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Mars, for your question. All right, let's see. I'm going to go back to you all in this session. Does anybody else have any questions or comments that they would like in closing? No? Let's see. Got a lot of people in the building today. Thank you all so much for coming. All right, I think that that concludes. Dr. Croft, do you have any other closing comments that you'd like to add before we sign off?
I just want to say, I think everyone I have seen, this is a beautiful crowd. I'm so grateful to be here in community with you. This is one of the highlights of my week because, like I said, I am at home with these children every day. And so being able to share in some kind of community event, an event that is for the health and wealth of our community, I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Dr. Croft, for your informative presentation. It's been wonderful. It's the highlight of our week also to have you here to kick off our Health is Wealth series. So thank you so much. We really enjoyed it. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up and high fives. Thank you all for using your functions down there, using your hands. Thank you. We love it. We love to see it. All right, so I'd also like to take a moment to thank UC Davis School of Medicine, the California Department of Health, and the City of Oakland Parks and Recreation for supporting this program. Be sure to join us next Wednesday as Dr. Cook shares insights about the history of vaccines along with the COVID-19 vaccine updates. Thank you so much for joining us for the kickoff of the Health is Wealth series. This is Mind, Body, and Spirit, where we focus on the good life. And with that being said, my name is Shanette Merrick. This is the Good Life Program for Healthy Aging. And as you all know, if you'd like to learn more about the Good Life Program, you can go to thegoodlifepath.org to find out more information about all the amazing classes that we have here and register for those classes, okay? Register, we have Zumba, aerobics, exercise with Mr. Michael Tapman, who's sitting back here. And we have yoga / Pilates and the nutrition class with myself and with Elise from 18 Reasons. So thank you all. Thank you again, Dr. Raina Croff. You are amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And thank all of you for joining us. Have a beautiful day.